This is Diablo 4. We're here taking a look at the beta on Xbox Series S. Be sure to like the video, subscribing is great as well. And since this is a beta, if you are buying the game on the Xbox Store, consider using the Microsoft affiliate link in the video description. As you're probably buying it digitally, it's an easy way to support the channel. So what are we getting here? It looks like it's 1440p at 60 FPS with some sort of temporal thing. It is a game that you can play, cooperatively. It's a game you can kind of play alone. There are many multiplayer angles and dynamic styles to this one as you enjoy a world with like events and stuff that other people can kind of interact with, or you can just do traditional cooperative type options when going in and exploring the overall world. There's a lot to enjoy, a lot to play, and it is a very expansive sort of offering in regards to the content and everything that is available. So within the beta, you are able to play through the first act of the game. This is about 3 to 4 hours of gameplay from a narrative standpoint, and then there is a plethora of different side activities and quests and stuff you can do for leveling, and it's a very large kind of world that they've showcased here. So for the Series S, I would say the biggest thing for me is like the full scale and the aesthetic of the experience is here. It does seem to be moving and running quite fluidly. I will note that it is quite like murky, and it does seem to also still have a little bit of like some elements of textures not fully kind of loading, if that makes sense, all the time. And again, this, I stress this out, as it is a beta. There is also like, some of the queuing and stuff is quite long, and then there's some disconnect issues. But as I said, it's a beta, and I would imagine by the time you go to play this or play the full game, that very likely, everything will be running smoothly and looking good, and everything like that. I'm sure they will polish this up just right for that full release, or even later elements of the beta. So I'm actually fairly impressed with this. This is a very, very expansive, exciting sort of offering for, Diablo action. If you are, kind of strangely not familiar with this, the series is based around kind of dungeon crawling. It's one of the more iconic franchises out there. This really gets blurry sometimes visually. Sorry, we just had to go sell stuff at the town. We're gonna go back out there and continue exploring and show off some of the areas. But what's really neat about this one, and I think if you're a fan of, the older Diablo games, it definitely seems like a bit of a return to the more grim, darker elements of like Diablo 2, especially coming from like the Diablo 2 remake, which was like a year or so ago. This one definitely feels tonally, aesthetically, visually similar to that one. And this doesn't quite show it off. We'll have to find like a dungeon or something somewhere because it's all icy and snowy. But I do assure you, it definitely is quite creepy and grotesque and dark, and there's like blood all over the walls, and the environments are very, very detailed in regards to, just like the level of basically, what's in the environment, the amount of objects, the skulls, the enemies, and it all looks really, really cool, and again, quite aesthetically pleasing. So from a narrative standpoint, you're kind of picking a class. I've got the barbarian here, but there's like the sorcerer and the rogue, and this week when I'm checking this out on the Series S, there's a couple classes we don't have access to yet, and you're kind of like this lone sort of individual that's out there, and you are kind of making your way in the world, and eventually you end up on this hunt for Lilith. And it's kind of like, what is Lilith doing? What's going on? And that sort of forms the basis for the narrative in this game, is kind of like, what is Lilith up to? And that's really where they kind of leave it at the end of the act, is you're just kind of like, okay, it's a tease, it's a setup where it's like, oh, and who knows what's going to happen, or it's kind of it's very very like sort of open ended, and it's kind of a perfect spot actually for them to sort of, I guess you would say, conclude like a beta of this sorts, as it does kind of be like it teases you of what's to come next. And I thought that was really really quite intriguing, just that element of, you know, kind of setting the stage, and then, you know, kind of leaving you with a little bit of like curiosity, I guess you would say. I don't know if it like fully delivers on that curiosity, because I'm like, huh, okay, but it is, I'm sort of like, okay, where are you going with this? What is the overall goal? Because it seems like in comparison to previous, you know, Diablo offerings, that this one, like Lilith, is a bit of a wild card, some might say, in regards to like what she does and the decisions she makes. It's very very interesting what they're sort of, you know, going for in that kind of perspective. Very very intriguing. But I quite like the setup of the differing environments. I like the concepts. What is that? A treasure goblin? And yes, there is a lot of loot to find. There are a lot of different enemies. There are a lot of different like bosses to come across and monsters, and strangely a more focused kind of take on narrative structure in this one. It almost actually felt a bit heavy for the story stuff, because like the first 20 minutes is like really really heavily cinematics, very much story stuff. Once you get into it, you know, when you're hacking and slashing though, it's like very much traditional Diablo. But I was kind of like, it is, you know, taking a while to actually really, really get into the experience. So, you know, from what I've played, I quite like... Ooh, a stronghold nearby. Maybe we should do the event up here, though. Is it level 25 plus is this area? Is that what that's saying? Wow. That's kind of crazy. Anyways, yeah, it's a neat scenario, it's a neat setup. They got some fun gameplay to this. I had a good time sitting there kind of mulching through the beta and seeing what it has to offer, and I've got more to kind of do. I've got some more class kind of runs I'm going to check out, see how I vibe for different classes for when, you know, the full game kind of comes, like what I want to settle with, what do I want to use. I mean, I'm quite enjoying the Barbarian, but you know, every class has their own style, because the whole point of like, you know, Diablo is like you play it, and then you replay it with a harder difficulty for better loot, and then you play different classes, and you keep doing more and more difficult things for better loot stuff and more rewards. And then they've got like a bit of a long-term, I guess you would say, concept to this one. So we're gonna have to see how that sort of turns out and what that has to offer gameplay-wise, if they keep it interesting. But, you know, obviously, to me, you can kind of calculate that it seems to have a healthy amount of game time to it right off the bat, at least from what this betas show. And it's a chunky beta, is the thing. It's kind of like, it's a good taste. It really allows you to sink your teeth into it. It definitely leaves you kind of being like, oh, I wish we had a bit more, you know, so I could experience more of it. But, yeah, happy for what I got. I was kind of like, okay. Got a good feel for it, good vibe. And like I said, I really do like the sort of gory, creepy, detailed, dark, brooding aesthetic that they're going for on this one. I think it's actually probably going to be a really, really big success. I kind of see this one, I foresee it being right up there with the, you know, the all-time classics in the Diablo series. But, you know, as I said, we really don't know the full scope of where they're going with this one, and we'll have to wait. At least at the time of, you know, doing this sort of thing, we're going to have to wait for the full, you know, release of it, the full concept, the full whatever they're going to go with, what they're going to offer us. But I'm really, really enjoying what we got so far. It is a little hard to adjust on this one. Like, I think on the Series S it actually looks pretty good. And, you know, obviously having the 60 FPS is nice. But it is quite a bit blurrier than what I'm used to for the Series X. And I know that's kind of like a no-duh sort of thing, if that makes sense to a degree. Like, it doesn't look too bad, but it does, like, it feels like a significant sort of change in, like, fidelity. And, yeah, it's just kind of like, it is, to me, a big difference between what I had seen prior. Which is kind of interesting. I don't mind it, though. Like, it all runs pretty well and smoothly, which is nice. And the full scope of it is here, which is, you know, kind of expected. I mean, I wasn't assuming they would be doing any sort of cutbacks for the Series S. But, yeah, it is neat to see a Diablo title that is, I guess you would say, properly, like, optimized for the Series S, because, you know, a lot of the other ones, little cross-gen-esque, you know what I mean? Even with Diablo 2 there, they kind of gave us graphics and a resolution mode, which was an interesting choice. Whereas this, you just got, like, the default sort of option, and that's what you get, right? So that in itself is really, really actually quite intriguing. But it all seems to load pretty fast, all seems to run well. And like I said, it's mostly down to the fact that, like, you know, you've got basically these queue issues, these server type issues. But if, you know, if those elements all work out well, and they, you know, they get this all set, but of course that's the point of doing a beta, I think we're in for a real treat with this one. I'm actually really, really excited to see what the final scope of this is, because it already seems just, you know, absolutely massive. Obviously from that map I showed, it seems to be really, really big. I just hope, like, the endgame stuff's all interesting and intriguing and kind of, like, you know, kind of keeps you hooked, I guess would be the biggest thing. Hooked and sort of, like, wanting to keep playing it over and over again with different stuff. Because that's the Diablo magic, is the desire to keep battling and slaying. I am actually trying to head over to a dungeon, though, so we can show that off, because I know the overworld is a little... Like, it's still, like, a pretty creepy, dark, kind of, like, snow area, but there is something a lot more, to me, majestic and magical and creepy about, you know, doing the actual dungeons, where you could see, like, skulls, and, you know, it's all dark and cryptic and bloody and messed up looking. There's something about it that's... There we go. Look at this entrance, right? This is the type of place where you go to die. And that's what we want at the Diablo game. You know what I mean? You want that kind of thing. It's the grim dark and the, oh no, what are we gonna do? Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. The Path of Blood. Nah, it is rough coming from the Series X, though. Again, like, I'm not trying to hate on the Series S at all. Like, I definitely think, you know, this is a decent offering for it, but oh, I love the clarity and the sharpness I get on that one. Because this is a very, very good looking game. I think the ambience is handled well. It's creepy and foreboding, and it's just like, ugh. Unsettling locales of dark and death and all that great stuff. You know, the kind of thing you expect from a Diablo game. I also kind of hope that they have some weird level twists. I'd like to see actually some cleaner areas, because if you did Diablo 3, I think it's fair to say that one had a bit more of a light element to it. Like, there's definitely some more, like, divinity type places in that one, which made it a little, again, I guess you would go with, like, lighter. So I'm hoping maybe there's an area or two like that, because I'd love to see these, like, more detailed, in-depth, you know, current gen type visuals used in that way as well. But I do love that so far, like, almost all the dungeons, all the places I've gone to are just creepy and just unsettling and so aesthetically pleasing, and, you know, well, as you can see in the details of this world all around us, you know, it's pretty messed up looking, right? That's kind of what you expect out of these games. The weird tentacle things, the skeletons, the bloody stuff, the slain knights.
This might very well be my last journey.
Yeah, the creepy texts. The whole element of doom and gloom. I mean, that's the biggest part of it. It's just like, you know, going about in these creepy places, being that hero that has to like smash through dozens upon dozens of enemies and vampiric things, and oh wow, they got such a like a variety of enemies in this, which I love. Like you got everything from like weird bats to like skeletons to slug monsters to giant brooding like grotesque combinations of flesh and bone, and yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, it's really creepy. Really hits those you know, Diablo 2 vibes, which again, coming off of, you know, that Diablo 2 upgrade not too long ago, it's sort of a nice connectivity bit. Like, if you go and you play that one to kind of prep for this one, I think, like, aesthetically and mood-wise, it's going to feel kind of similar. There was actually so many times when I was, like, streaming and playing this where I'm kind of like, I want to switch back to the old visuals, but I'm like, that doesn't exist for this. So that, I think, is a good little sign of connectivity there, that is something of desire when I'm playing through it. I'm kind of thinking of that. Because that is a weird thing to think of, but that was a fun little thing, was the Diablo 2 back and forth switching. Okay. This is all really unsettling. I don't even really know what our specific mission is in this dungeon, but it's a pretty large dungeon. Ghouls to cut, enemies to kill. Oh, and there's like a wealth of like skills and abilities and stuff. Like, this really does seem like a tease of those two, because there's so many where it's like reach level 50 to do this, or there's all these like long-term sort of goals and challenges and branching little skill trees. They give you so little, you know, of what the full thing seems to be. That's why it's interesting to do like these beta review type things occasionally, is just to kind of be like, you know, what I'm getting from what I'm seeing. It's almost like a preview sort of thing, you know, a glimpse into what the full scope of it's going to be, and you know, diving into it eventually as well down the road. It'll be interesting to see the full potential of this one. I'm very excited though. I'm hoping this is something that I will be able to sit there and play for many years. I mean, Diablo 3 has been kicking it for a long past, I'd say it's even prime, and you know, it is, hopefully this one will be a little meatier with post-launch content. Like, obviously there's, you know, every Diablo game's had its fair share of like big expansions, but with the whole more live service type concept, I'm hoping they kill it, you know, in a good way. But like, we will have to wait and see, as that has been so hit or miss in this industry as of recent. But like a steady trickle of Diablo content would be very enticing. I don't want to enrage this thing. The two-handed hammer. Ooh, vampire bats. Lots of enemies to mulch through, eh? I don't know how many of these things I gotta kill. Seriously, I've killed a lot of them. They're really quite monstrous, you know. Very monstrous monsters. I'd say overall, yeah, I definitely give this one a bit of an excited hype level of like, hey, this is looking good, playing well. Just the ridiculous queues and disconnects, and you've got yourself a very powerful, mighty Diablo game that hits the nostalgia in the right places and steps forward and you know, plays it safe, but also does some new fun things. And I could see myself spending way too much of my time playing this over and over and over again. So hopefully the full game does actually deliver and does provide this, because yeah, this would be a lot of fun to just waste the hours and the days away with. So we'll have to wait and see if I actually deliver on that full aspect of it. But so far, even on the Series S, not bad. It would be interesting to see some mode adjustments though. How did I miss that over there to go that way? Unbelievable, you know what I mean? Out here Diabloing away, and I miss an essential spot that I was supposed to go through. Shocker.